Okay, I think we are already 10-15 minutes late in the game. So good points from her. I took some notes, but before we move forward, just wanted to let everyone know that we needed this forum to be a safe space for the participants to share their views and their comments. So nothing is for broadcast or reporting from here. Just wanted to let you know about that. And we are also not going to share any comments as such, particularly the lived experiences from the participants. So just bear that in mind. Let's go on to the next presentation, which is we engaged Sophia Jacob and Jeff from Ottawa U. This presentation is the crux of a review of the anti-racism work in Ottawa over the past 4 years, the recommendations and actions identified in the past, and the progress that has been made since then, and whatever is coming up next. So I'll just hand it over to Jeff and Sophia.
Hi everyone. Can everyone hear me? Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you well, Sophia.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sophia Jacob, and I'm the Equity and Diversity Liaison with Councillor Ralston King's office. Today, I'm going to be presenting with Jean-Francois Ratelle. He is an assistant professor with Ottawa U. We are also both members of United for All Coalition. We serve as part of the Rapid Response Team. Jeff and I have prepared this presentation. It is a contextual overview related to anti-racism work here in Ottawa. Before we start the presentation, I would like to thank all of the United for All Coalition partners, members of our Champions Table, grassroots group that do this tremendous amount of advocacy work in this space day in and day out, and the community at large. This forum is an opportunity to see what has been done and also chart a path forward with actions that can be taken immediately. So Jeff, if you can go to the next slide.
Yeah, you should see it now.
Okay, great. So just quickly, these are the latest incidents that's happened maybe in the last 3 years up to today. So if you look, it's been the anti-Black racism. So it was the graffiti on the church, as well as at a community member's home. We had COVID-19, and we had anti-Asian community racial slurs, and a lot of mischief in those areas. So Jeff, go to the next slide.
You should see it now.
Yep. So what we reviewed are 7 reports and documents published between 2017 and 2020. We had OLIP, Cowie, Somerset West Health Community Center, and Social Planning Council. We also reviewed Ralston King's letter to the City of Ottawa Police Board, and we have other documents that we reviewed from the province and federal governments. The main objectives were recommendations made for the city and its jurisdictions, actions, programs, and initiatives launched in Ottawa over the past 2 years, and we identify what remains to be achieved and discussed, and to discuss a way forward. Jeff, the next slide.
Yeah, so in the PowerPoint that we will share with the participant, probably through the United for All website, we have tried to identify, based on OLIP and Cowie as well as Somerset report, recommendations that were put forward to address systemic racism and racism in Ottawa. Some recommendations were made, as India explained, toward the city. For example, the official acknowledgement of anti-Black racism and other forms of racism, their impacts, including on mental health, and what institutions can do to address it. We will not have time to go in every aspect of the recommendation. They are very well explained in the report did by OLIP and Cowie and Somerset, but we found that it was very important to have them on a PowerPoint accessible to people, where we do a summary of those elements. For example, with regard to the city of Ottawa, we also discussed about engaging with Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action, a framework that were established by the United Nations, as well as having corporate initiative about employment, about training, about anti-racism. But those elements also apply to social services and mental health. I know we're going fast with the slide, the time is limited, but you'll be able to look at them by yourself later on. So recommendation that were made was also that social services needed to address and analyze and acknowledge the impact of systemic racism at several aspects of life, as India mentioned, to acknowledge and address the barrier that racialized communities face, especially for people facing multiple forms of marginalization as women, as minorities, as the racialized minorities, and also the importance of create coalition for promoting Black people and racialized communities' voice and leadership as part of the solution. As India underlined, it's not only about shiny PowerPoints or shiny brochures, it is about actions that can be taken by the community for the community. There's a lot of elements that can be identified, from creating safe space for authentic and open conversation, for healing and learning, as we're trying to achieve here. The analysis of policy structure that address racism on a daily aspect, as well as addressing white privilege, white fragility in our community, but also elements connected to policing, connected to barriers within our education system. So several elements are identified in those reports, leading us to summarize what we have seen in our city in the last 3 years. Many of the partners of the United for All Coalition has sent us initiatives that were made across the city, from workshops organized by Equity for Us and action planning sessions that are active for the community, neighborhood stakeholder groups, as well as online virtual anti-racism events. India has identified also what Equity Ottawa and OLIP has done recently, including the creation of a roadmap and a collective plan that we have discussed rapidly here. Youth Ottawa have engaged in program dedicated strictly to racialized youth, helping them to achieve full potential and provide them resources, as well as providing data and analysis on inequities and inequalities within our city. A bit as discussed in detail about the initiative made by United for All about the Ottawa Local Action Plan and the various initiatives within United for All. To also address other initiatives that was launched, the City of Ottawa with the Anti-Racism Secretariat initiative with Youth Futures for employment and support of racialized youth in Ottawa, community initiative that Mayor Watson will discuss more later, as well as developing better and more efficient and healthy relationship with the Indigenous community, as well as initiative and equity strategy for women in Ottawa. Crime Prevention Ottawa has launched several events based on their speaker series to discuss and identify resources to fight racism and move forward. And I would mention, and I know that Chief Slowly will discuss about that, the Ottawa Police Service has launched recently the Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Multi-Year Action Plan. From all those initiatives is to understand that when you're talking about human rights, when you're talking about racial discrimination and the way forward, the glass will always be empty. We can always do better. But it is important to understand what was achieved so far in the city of Ottawa in order to understand what are the way forward in our community. So we can see in this slide, we try to identify 4 points that underline points that were within OLEP and CAWI report, including to be more accountable to racialized community in Ottawa, create safe space and support for authentic dialogue, to collect and make publicly racially disaggregate data about COVID, about other elements of inequalities and discrimination, as well as creating coalition, including United for All and other coalition, to promote support for the Black community and other racialized community to voice and develop leadership within Ottawa. And now I'll move to Sophia to discuss more about what we see as way forward with regard to racism and anti-racism in Ottawa.
So as Jean-Francois said, next steps is on our way forward. Ralston King wrote a letter to the Ottawa Police Board on June 22nd, and in the letter, it noted some great investments and some great points. So it was social investments, supporting and developing of early interpretations to mitigate the disproportionate harm that Black, Indigenous, and racialized people experience through their contact with the justice system. Communities to address systemic causes of crime. He also addressed mental health crises in the city, mobilizing mental health, crisis intervention, and engaging youth, a youth strategy. Councillor Ralston King has been talking about a youth strategy for at least 10 years and charting a way forward for our youth and racialized communities. Also, on our next slide, we have increased diversity in our municipal workforce, better hiring systems and better hiring practices within our municipal workforce, to develop policies to examine and address colonial legacies, stereotypes, and existing privileges and advantages within our institutions and address that. Create accessible, culturally competent, peer-designed, example like community-designed public education sessions for racialized communities. To engage with citizens, people want to be listened to and heard whenever they're talking about, this anti-racism work and how they've been racialized in racialized communities, how we have been systemic racism hits us hard. And when we're trying to chart a way forward, we want to be heard by our community and by our political leaders. Can you go to the next one, Jeff?
Yep.
Improve community engagement and accountability, initiatives to educate dominant groups. We also have development and implement initiatives that target racism in the school system. Next slide. And that is the end of our presentation. Our apologies for going so quick. We are on a time limit, but for anybody that wants these slides, we will have them ready for you and we can send an email out to you with the slides in both official languages. Again, I want to thank everybody for listening to our presentation, and I'll pass it back to Abid.
Thank you so much, Sophia and Jeff. This was a great overview of the work that's already been done and what's coming up.